Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
As Stephen R. Covey says, all things are created twice, first mentally and then physically. The key to creativity is to begin with the end in mind, with a vision and a blueprint of the desired result. The idea entails original thinking and its implementation needs entrepreneurial spirit with enabling environment for startups. As we all know that being a startup is not easy, you really need an enabling startup ecosystem. That's what the government is trying to build with the help of various partners. With the launch of Make in India and Startup India initiatives by the Government of India, our country is now amongst the top 3 countries in the world in terms of startups. India has the most enabling ecosystem for the startups, with some successful unicorns also being seen in the health technology area. In today's discussion, I will be briefly telling you about the key initiatives of the Government of India to spur the biotech startup ecosystem in the country. Ideas to innovation, enabling biotech ecosystem for startups in our country. Before going into the details of the presentation, first of all, let us try to understand what is a startup. A startup is a company or a limited liability firm which has a turnover of less than rupees INR 100 crores in the last 10 financial years. And what is a unicorn? Unicorn is an organization, is a startup company which is worth $1 billion or above in size. It's very heartening to see that now even in healthcare sector we can see some unicorns. You might be aware of the Malbio, OneCard are some of those examples. Before going to the details, let us try to understand what is idea and what is innovation. Idea is basically a new thing or new idea for developing a technology or a process which comes into your mind. But what about innovation? When you can take this idea, novel ideas to solve a consumer problem, to develop some kind of a value proposition, to create some value proposition, it is innovation. So, from idea to development to implementation, there are 2 ways you can take it forward. You can either transfer your technology to an established company that we discussed in my previous presentation or previous discussion, whereas you can also look at adopt the startup or the entrepreneurial route for technology development. In this discussion, in this presentation, we are going to discuss primarily the startup route or the entrepreneurship route of technology development. Before we go into the details, let us look at some of the fun facts about the startup ecosystem in our country. We all know that there is a lot of rise of startups in our country, and now we are a startup nation. It is a very interesting thing to observe that now India is among the top 3 countries in the world in terms of startups. When we look at the startup ranking in India, what all we have achieved, we are 3rd largest in terms of startups world over. We have around 1 lakh startups registered with the DPIIT, which is the official organization for looking at startups. And now we can see lot of unicorns also coming in our country, and we can say that the unicorns in our country are worth 108 billion US dollars. That's a huge amount and very exciting. What about biotech startup ecosystem in our country? Biotech, we all know, is a very technically savvy field, but still in this biotech area we have seen 5,365 companies in the last 5 years. That's really interesting to see. India is among the top 12 biotech destinations in the world and 2nd highest in numbers of US FDA approved plants. So, that is a very interesting way wherein we can say that even in terms of biotech startups, our country is doing good. Startups, biotech sector faces lot of challenges, it has long gestation period, lot of uncertainties because we are working in the healthcare or the biotech sector, working with the living organisms, it becomes very difficult, but at the same time we have lot of investment opportunities. So, government thought that biotech sector has huge potential, why not to nurture this sector so that we can take it to the next level. That is what we are going to look today and discuss the key components of the startup ecosystem in our country. When we have reached the stage, there might have been lot of work behind where we are in terms of startup. So, we have in our country now very great startup ecosystem which is very enabling, and government has tried to work with all the various stakeholders including academia, the investors, to build in that ecosystem. We have lot of funding opportunities in our country, we have IP facilitation cells established, infrastructure support, regulatory facilitation, market facilitation, lot of mission programs like Atal Innovation Missions. They have also been initiated by the government, and we see lot of fiscal policy initiatives in our country. So, we will be going through the details of each one of this in as we move ahead. First of all, for the startups to nurture, we definitely need fiscal policy initiatives by the government to create the right ecosystem in place. We all know that Make in India and Startup India initiatives were started by the government, and they were taken forward by the people in a big way. The startups were very happy, and the entire ecosystem embraced this move by the government of India. This has provided a huge policy impetus to this sector. Can India's growth story be yours? Of course, why not? Coming to the funding opportunities, funding is a very essential ingredient for the startups to take that courage to venture into a startup venture. So, government thought, all the government ministries, whether it is DBT, whether it is ICMR, Ministry of Health, Department of Science and Technology, all the government agencies are working hand in hand with a common objective to foster Startup India and enable Make in India for the healthcare sector, primarily for the healthcare and the biotech sector, is what we are discussing today. So, there are lot of funding opportunities if you have to start a startup venture. Here the inputs by the Department of Biotechnology, Biotech Industry Research Assistance Council, BIRAC, must be taken into record, because BIRAC has put in lot of efforts to nurture the startup ecosystem, particularly in the biotech area. ICMR also thought that this medical device and diagnostic sector, we have lot of import dependencies. So, to give a specific thrust to this area and to foster Make in India for medical device and diagnostics, ICMR has also initiated and set up Medical Device and Diagnostics Mission Secretariat, MDMS, at ICMR headquarters, with the mandate to foster Make in India for the medical device sector. We at ICMR are committed to work hand in hand with the academia and the startup innovators and help them cross the valleys of death, so that we can see some of the products for societal impact to be used by the country at large and globally. So, when we look at the funding landscape, we have funding opportunities available straight from ideation to commercialization. If you are an innovator with an exciting idea, but you are not a startup, still if you can incubate in an incubator facility, you can avail the BIG grant of the Government of India. So, that is the way. This has never happened in other countries, other parts of the world, but it has happened in India, because we knew that we will have to provide specific thrust to this sector, then only this we will fly and become a startup nation. We have funding opportunities for proof of concept, we have funding opportunities for validation and trials, and even for commercialization. Our agencies, our government departments have working with the banks and the venture capitalists, like we have the ACE fund of the DBT, which can be provided for commercialization. High risk investment also government is taking, and these are some of the schemes by ICMR under MDMS, which can be availed, with particular reference to the MPRIDE scheme, which is particularly for the startups. It is not only government, the private sector also has a role to play when it comes to investments. So, there comes the role of angels and VCs. Angels are the private firms. We have lot of angels now in our country, for example, the Indian Angel Network, the Indian Investment Network, Kite Ventures, Mumbai Angels. They are there to provide hand-holding support to the innovators. They provide funding opportunity, but they take some part of equity in their, they have some equity stakes in their venture. If you need a big ticket funding from the private investors, then comes the role of VCs. Angel investors are particularly relevant when you need the funding of small ticket size and a relatively more risky situation, but in the venture funding is required when the ticket size of investment is relatively large. Here comes the role of different kind of VCs which are available in our country. Although the VC culture in our country is still about to rise, I mean it is nurturing, it has to still reach to its full boon. But we have India Innovation Fund, we have India Science Venture Fund, and this is very interesting to note that Government of India, DBT BIRAC has also joined hands with the private investors and bankers, and they have come out with an ACE fund, innovation fund. This has never happened in the history of India, that government doing VC funding, but it is there now. For developing a technology for the startups to spur, they definitely need infrastructure facilities. The startups, if they start their work in their own venture, it's not going to be a very profitable work for them. Initially they cannot afford to develop their own factories or big office spaces wherein they can sit. They generally start very humble. So the role of government there also becomes very important, and we have lot of infrastructure facilities being supported and by the Government of India. We have technology business incubators, we have biotech parks, we have special economic zones wherein if the startup is able to incubate there, they get lot of benefits. For example, having an office space in a technology business incubator or a biotech park will give them access to state of the art facilities of the organization wherein they incubate. For example, these incubator spaces are there in all IITs, be it IIT Bombay, be it IIT Madras, be it IIT Delhi. So you can go and try to incubate in these incubators, and then you will get access and mentorship by the faculty of those high institutes, high level institutes, the IITs, best of the kind. That is one advantage that you get. And by having incubation in an SEZ or special economic zone, you get tax holidays, you get lot of tax benefits, and also you get duty free import on the domestic procurement. So lot of advantages are there if you put your organization or your company, if you incubate your startup company into an SEZ. These are the kind of incubators which have been supported by Department of Biotechnology and Department of Science and Technology, particularly through the National Science and Technology Entrepreneurship Development Board. Now we have a bouquet of such technology business incubators across the country which can be availed, and these incubators have some technical capabilities, some kind of technical advantage you will get in some kind of an incubator and some other kind of incubator. So you really need to do some kind of a landscaping to understand what kind of incubator, what kind of skill set or what kind of facilities you need in that incubator, and then choose the right incubator to incubate your company. But these facilities are very much there which can be availed by the startups. Intellectual property is very, very important when it comes to startups. Startups have a very small ticket size, they really want to use each and every money that they spend very judiciously. Considering that intellectual property has a very, very important role to play when it comes to startups, government helped these startups in a big way. They came up with the Startup Intellectual Property Protection Scheme. By this SIPP scheme, what government has done, they have identified lot of facilitators, IP facilitators across the country, and they have been empaneled with the DPIIT, and these facilitators are providing free advisory services to all our startups. You can just see what are the numbers by virtue of which you can approach them. There is a whole list of IP facilitators which is available on the DPIIT site. These facilitators will help you draft, file and prosecute your application at no cost. The whatever cost you have to pay is only the official fees, but the drafting fees, all those expenses will be met by the government. Government will be providing that kind of a support to the facilitators whom they have empaneled. Interestingly, what comes into picture is that when you use this SIPP route, you are able to get about 80% reduction in the filing fees as well. So, and your IP filing and prosecution is also fast tracked. So, that is the hand holding support in the case of IP, intellectual property, the government is providing. We definitely need some kind of tax incentives for the startups to spur. That is how the Government of India came out with the income tax holiday for 3 consecutive financial years for the startups. So, there are lot of interesting things happening so as to facilitate or catalyze the startup ecosystem in our country. You need to just check out with the eligibility criteria of applying for this income tax rebate. The entity should be a recognized startup company with the DPIIT. So, I would urge that you should definitely go and register yourself, your startup company with the DPIIT, and it should be a company which is incorporated after 1st April 2016. All startups would say that we have developed a product, but it is not getting up into the market. Can government also help in public procurement or market facilitation? That is a very interesting thing which government thought we should help the startup ecosystem to spur. Why? Because we are an emerging economy. If we have to provide hand holding support to the startups so that this ecosystem can work. Therefore, the kind of benefits that government is providing is relaxation in the public procurement norms. The startup companies, if they apply for through the GEM portal, interestingly, all the requirements of turnover and the experience criteria will be waived off. So, this is basically been done to enable that the startup companies can compete with the established companies having established track record of doing similar kind of works for the government. So, that has been waived off. They will be given preferential treatment to the startups when they go to GEM portal or any other public procurement panel. National Health Systems Resource Center as specific organization is doing a lot of work so as to facilitate public procurement. They have established a National Healthcare Innovation Portal, which is a very transparent portal keeping in mind the Digital India initiative of the Government of India. The startups can apply for through this National Health Innovations Portal and put in the status of their technology, the kind of regulatory approvals it has reached, and this people, the Government of India people from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare at NHSRC will evaluate those inventions and see that if they are good from public procurement angle, they have crossed all the ticks of having a robust technology, that which means they have the regulatory approvals, they have done the validations in the right spirit. Then these 5 of such startups are given hand holding support on a regular way, so that their products can be recommended for procurement by the state government. We have heard about the various ways government is helping you to develop a startup company to have that ecosystem spur, but now definitely this thing will be coming into your mind. Now you might be actually excited on availing this opportunity. So, now I will be telling you about how to register yourself with the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, that is DPIIT. How do you become a DPIIT recognized startup? For this, eligibility criteria is very straightforward. You should be a private limited company or a registered partnership firm LLP company. You should have a turnover of less than 10 crores in any previous financial years, and you should be considered as a startup up to 10 years from the date of incorporation. So, if you are a more than 10-year-old company, then you will not be able to avail the startup benefits. So, these are some of the steps which you can follow to get registered with the DPIIT. It is primarily through a portal. They have an online portal wherein you need to first of all register yourself. Once you register yourself, then you have to apply, put in an application. It is a very methodical self explaining website, and these are the steps you need to follow so as to get recognized by DPIIT, and the certificate that you are recognized by DPIIT as a startup will also come on the portal within a very timeline based manner. We all know about the co-vaccine development, the India's first indigenous COVID-19 vaccine, which was developed by ICMR in collaboration with Bharat Biotech. I thought it is a very inspirational story that we must discuss. This definitely inspires us to tackle the huge pandemic by making Make in India vaccine suitable for India and the world. It is a very highly impactful innovation. Interestingly, nature says that for developing a vaccine, you need 10 to 15 years of time. The vaccine journey starts from proof of concept, then you need to do animal studies. It goes all along to phase 1 study, phase 2 clinical study, phase 3 clinical study, and then scale up in CGMP manufacturing facility and huge societal impact by bringing it to the people by commercialization. So, this journey typically takes 10 to 15 years, but during the time of pandemic, considering that this vaccine is really needed to protect the countrymen from this epidemic of COVID, ICMR worked with Bharat Biotech and developed this Covaxin in a very interesting time period of 1.5 years. These are the typical timelines that we worked. In fact, at that point in time, all government agencies would work hand in hand. DCGI would be working hand in hand with ICMR, guiding us on how to develop this technology in a time bound manner. We had all the support from the Niti Aayog, from the PM's office. So, it's all a combined success of government working together for the people. So, along with developing this Covaxin, it was not only important to develop the vaccine, it is also important to develop its implementation plan and a communication statement, so as to bring confidence in people to hopefully embrace this technology and get vaccinated. There were lot of places, say for example Guwahati or the northeast areas wherein the vaccine could not be delivered. So, government also thought that why not to use the drone technology to deliver this vaccine into hard to reach areas, and that is how we can see today the Make in India vaccine, not only for our country but for the world. If at that point in time we were not encouraged enough to develop this Make in India vaccine for our country and the world, we would have been in a very difficult position. Why? Because you would all remember that the countries which had their own vaccine would prefer to give the vaccine to their own people rather than giving it to other countries, considering it was a huge pandemic. This Covaxin helped us to save the lives of 1.4 billion population of our country, and at the same time it helped us to have a global mark of innovation in the healthcare space that our country can do. To conclude, we have a very ambient startup ecosystem in our country. We have all the ticks in place, the right environment for the startups to spur in our country. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. It requires being extraordinary in an ordinary world. I would like to end by saying that you all are encouraged to build your own dreams, or someone else will hire you to build theirs. This is an important quote we must keep in mind. With this, I would end my presentation. These are some of the important web links that you must go through to get into the details of the various components of the startup ecosystem. Thank you and Jai Hind.